Today on Rebuild Yourself, I found a glute bridge that I love and I must share with you because for years I've not given my patients glute bridges because they just don't seem to activate the glutes or tilt the pelvis the way that I would like. There's so many ways to mess it up, but I found this exercise that fixes all of my problems with the glute bridge. Today on Rebuild Yourself, this is the Anatomy of Therapy. Welcome. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. Help people find the channel. If you have any questions, there's a comments below. Subscribe. We're putting out these Rebuild Yourself videos. And today, muscles, movements, methodology, we are going over a glute bridge that actually freaking works. So let me kind of break down the movement for you here. Let's get into it. Then we'll talk about the various muscles over here. I've got this whole new program. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to teach you all sorts of things. But let's break down the glute bridge first. First and foremost, we get into the position. We have a little block. You can use a stair. I like to use a weight. Anything that you can kind of elevate your forefoot up. That is the key with this one. The second thing you're going to do, once you put your feet back on it, let's go back, buddy. Let me show you. So he's going to do a march here in a second. Let's say both feet are down. What you're going to do is basically just lift your hips up off the ground and do a little pelvic tilt, okay? This will help ensure that we're going to hit our hamstrings, that our spine is close to a neutral position, but you just basically want to lift your hips a little bit off the ground. You can kind of see some space right in there. That is step one. Step two, put your forefoot here on the blocks and try to keep your heel up. Don't let it sag too much. It will as we go, and we'll talk about that, what that means here in a second. Okay, so once you've got the feet on the bridge, you've got your hips up a little bit, you're going to do a march. And we'll talk about some different variations as we go through this, but this is the basic idea. You're going to go through the simple march here, 1 foot up, and then your forefoot goes right back down. You're maintaining this pelvis off the ground, and then you lift and set the foot back down. Pretty simple. You're going to go back and forth. Basic glute bridge. Now, what are we targeting today? What are the muscles we're targeting in this position with the forefoot? And let me tell you how important it actually is to have this forefoot on the ground. We'll go over the muscles here in a second. The forefoot on the ground is the most important part because typically when you are walking, basic gait, when you are pushing off the last stance of gait, what happens is your forefoot pushes off. And when that forefoot pushes off, typically the pelvis will tilt forwards, okay? And this is where you can get impingement in the back, piriformis syndrome, they talk about. So that's the last phase of gait, and it's very important in that last phase of gait where your forefoot is pushing off, very similar to what we've got going over here, that you can feel your hamstrings holding your pelvis back, okay? So that is the last phase of gait, forefoot, and then what we want to do is connect the forefoot to the hamstrings, okay? So that we don't anteriorly pelvic tilt our pelvis. I'll show you exactly what I mean here. Let's go to the muscles. So in the muscles here, you'll see this is the bottom of the foot, and you'll notice that the forefoot here, in this area, actually connects down to the posterior and deep musculature of the calf, okay? So we also know that after all that connects, that is the same deep line as your hamstrings. Your hamstrings are here, they're here, they're here, they're here, and they attach right up here to the pelvis, the ischial tuberosity. Now, what does that do? Let's move it away so you can kind of see. So the hamstrings attach, let's talk about it, grab the pen. They grab onto here and to here. Now this is the most posterior aspect of the pelvis. And so they kind of go down from here down to there. So this is where that shifting of the pelvis is going to occur. If the hamstrings do not anchor the pelvis down here, what happens is that the pelvis will kind of tilt forward. So you can kind of see it actually better from this angle. So here's where the hamstrings tilt. This is where we don't want them to go. The hamstrings are going to be the opposite direction, pulling down this way, okay? So that is where the hamstrings go. Let's see if you can see it here. Here they attach, boom. There's a semimembranosus. That's going to go to the medial side, so you need a lot of groin for this. That's going to also help keep your pelvis tilted. And then we get to the big ones. These are the hamstrings here as well, and then here as well. That's the big one. Biceps femoris, that lateral hamstring basically. that's what we're looking for. Okay, so that is how we tilt the pelvis back. That's the most posterior anchor that we have to tilt the pelvis back. We need those hamstrings. We know that those hamstrings also go down to the forefoot, and that is where we activate them, and that's how they anchor the pelvis back. Okay, so in this exercise, very simply put, having a stable forefoot or last phase of gait as you push off and feeling your hamstrings at the same time is how you anchor your pelvis actively. Now, that is why this exercise is meant to march. So what he's talking about here, as you can kind of see, Ian's talking about what to do. You're going to march back and forth, and as you go back and forth, that's the hands doing this thing, you are going to be able to hit that forefoot and then reactively stabilize in the hamstrings, which we know will keep that pelvis in a neutral or tucked posteriorly position. If you can't feel your hamstrings in this position, your hip flexors take over, your low back takes over, and we start to let that pelvis tilt forward. But allowing the forefoot, or again, the last phase of gait, to hit, and then getting those hamstrings to then fire off in that connection helps with with a proper late phase of gait and pelvic neutrality. Okay, so this exercise is awesome. Here's the methodology. So we did the movement, we did the muscles, now the methodology. With going back and forth, we are looking for a reactive stability from forefoot to hamstring to pelvic stability, okay? I know it's a mouthful, but the best way to test this basically is to see if you can do about 20 reps. So not only do we need to get the fundamental mechanics in order, we need to make sure that we can do it like habit, like snapping, right? Okay? So that the pelvis is going to go back and forth and stabilize immediately. And then we need to build on some volume. So when I'm asking you to do 20 reps, if I can ask you to do 50 reps, then you really have created that habit. You won't have to think about tilting your pelvis, posting then you're going to do it well the first couple reps, nice and slow, like you're learning a piano song. Start slowly, build into it. And once you build into it, you'll notice that you get a lot of burn in the hamstring. This might be the best burn in the hamstring that I've got, and this might be the best sensation of that last phase of gait, which keeps that pelvis still, like we talked about. That is the key here today with this glute bridge. Try it out. Let me know if it works for you. Let me know if it doesn't work for you. I would really like to know, because I think this exercise is kind of money. It's kind of hard to mess up. I dare you to go out there and mess it up. Try to see if you can get 20 reps. Really try to make sure you try not to lift your back up and overextend through your back. Try not to let your heel drag down. Try not to flex your neck too much. Just really lift up the butt just a little bit. Do a little posterior pelvic tilt. Let the forefoot hit. March, lift those legs up. Go back and forth and see if you can get 20 reps. And tell me your hamstring is not on fire after this. And that, if your hamstring is mid-belly on fire, maybe hopefully a little bit towards the groin, you will know that you can stabilize your pelvis in a neutral position. That is a foundational way to rebuild yourself. And that is one of the baseline things we need if we are rebuilding our hips. This is good for the hips. This is good for the back. This is good for the knees. There are so many things that this is good for. Give it a try. Smash the like button if you haven't already. Leave a comment below. Hope you guys enjoy the new series, Rebuild Yourself. My buddy Bobby kind of came up with the idea, and I think it's a great idea. Let's rebuild those hips. Let's get those hamstrings going. Let's get that late phase of gait, forefoot stability to the posterior pelvic tilt in the hamstrings. Let's go. Try it out. Let me know what you think. Peace.